I believe we are on, and it is 6 o'clock, so I'd like to call us to order. In accordance with South Carolina Code of Laws, 1985, Section 30-4-80-E, the following have been notified of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting: the Herald, the Charlotte Observer, CN2, and WRHI. If I could ask that everybody please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and welcome to the full house tonight. You have all received a copy of the agenda. Were there any adjustments or corrections? If not, that will stand with unanimous consent. All right, so everybody's here because we've got some exciting special recognition. That's our first official order of business.
Go to the podium and
Okay.
Get it going. Seems like this is our appointed night. Jamie, do we always do it on this meeting? It seems like, which is fun. Each May we honor our reading recovery teachers, or our literacy. I got to use all the right terminology here. Teach you how to read is what they do. To get right down to it. I guess, and I'm going to guess here, maybe with Jamie's help, maybe 10 years or so or we added reading recovery in every school. We started out, I may be off on some years, but it's, for those of you who may not know in the public, it's such a worthwhile program. It takes struggling readers in grade 1 and brings them up to grade level before the end of grade 1. And then, correct, in general, in lay terms. And of course, we do a lot of other things with it, with the teachers, using them in other ways. But such a research-based way to prove that if children are not reading by, the impetus behind it is if children aren't reading by grade 3, then there's bad results for them later on. So it's not a cheap program, but we're proud of it, and it has effective results on the back end. Jamie White has been the leading person for the program now for 3 or 4 years, I believe. And she's a Tar Heel born and bred, and probably be one when she's dead. But she does have a little Clemson in her, because she's got pictures of you and Dabo in Clemson, because that's where reading recovery trains. So anyway, but she brought me this Clemson great wristband for my granddaughter, and so we're making progress with you, right? But I'm gonna ask Jamie to come up and do all the fun stuff, and I'll help her honor these teachers. So Jamie White.
She brought it for you because she's not going to wear it. Okay, I'm back. Hello, I'm so glad to be with you. Today I was looking through Twitter, read a tweet, whatever, and Betsy K is a trainer for Texas. So she works at Texas Women's University. And her tweet today said, "Even a well-designed commercial reading program cannot supplant a knowledgeable literacy teacher." So that always makes me just, there is so much value in professionally developing our teachers. And because a scripted program is not going to tell you exactly what to do in this moment in time with this particular reader. It takes a knowledgeable teacher who has thoughtful processes about what this kid needs next, and she's planning the next day based on what happened today, not based on what someone tells you to say. So I just thought that was really appropriate because we were doing this today. So let me give you a little update on the Fort Mill School District. We have 1 reading recovery teacher leader, that's me. We have 15 reading recovery teachers, 11 early literacy professionals, which we're going to honor tonight, and 11 elementary schools, and 1,315 first graders. That's a lot of little 6-year-olds. So, with this program, we're serving over 160 first graders one-on-one. So, what is Reading Recovery? It's a highly effective, short-term, one-on-one tutoring for low-achieving first graders. The intervention is most effective when it is available to all students who need it and is used as a supplement to good classroom teaching. If we don't have good classroom teachers, that's the safety net for all of our students. We have to have really strong classroom teachers. So thinking about who does Reading Recovery serve, we're serving those lowest achieving first graders who are not catching on to the complex set of concepts that make reading and writing possible. So my early literacy professionals, these 11 ladies we're going to honor tonight, they were not serving the lowest children in their school building, but that next tier of students. When I ran out of help from Reading Recovery, my early literacy professionals served that next tier of students. And each student gets a 30-minute individualized lesson for 12 to 20 weeks with one of these specially trained teachers. And when they can meet what we're thinking are benchmarks in the classroom, then they are released from the program and put back in the classroom. Now, these kids are tested at the beginning of the year. They're tested when they exit the program if they were a first wave student at mid-year, and then we go back at the end of the year and we test them again to see if they've maintained grade level. So they are looked at. We track them as second graders and into third grade as well. Peter has come up with a way that, for summer school, we've invited these kids to summer school to help them stay on grade level throughout the summer, because that's where our biggest slide is. When you look at kids from first to second grade, that's when they lose ground if they don't continue reading during the summer. So I'm really excited about what we've done. And, with the challenge of the pandemic, it has been a year, okay, because of student attendance, not being consistently at school. If they were quarantined, they're out. I've had my teachers try to meet with them virtually and, continue that consistency of everyday reading with them. So my Reading Recovery teachers have been great about connecting with those kids virtually. And then you have your teachers that get quarantined. But if you were quarantined and did not have a fever, we thought, go ahead and connect with them, even if you're at home. So we tried to keep it continuous with them. So let's think. Okay, here are our famous class of 2022 early literacy teachers in training. This was the first day. Okay, they're all looking glamorous. They've rested up from their summer vacation. This was back in August, so I've got several pictures throughout the year to see if we notice that this could be very stressful to take this class. Okay, so they look great, and here we go. So I think I'm in charge of clicking now. What we're going to do is I've got them in ABC order, and I think we've got those in ABC order. So when Dr. Epps calls their name, or if I call their name, Dr. Epps is going to have them come stand up here, and I'm going to show you some pictures about them, okay? So my first teacher is Crystal Anderson, and Crystal is from Gold Hill Elementary School, and she's a first grade teacher. So Crystal came in early, taught her kid, taught all of her first graders, and taught another child. So this is Crystal Anderson from Gold Hill Elementary, and these are some pictures of some children that she taught this year. Okay. Our next, and I've got to thank the people at these schools, because we could not do this without, Becky Dixon is their literacy coach. She was going in and helping in her classroom so Crystal could go and teach a kid at the end of the day. And the principals, Josh Burris, doing a great job trying to support these teachers. It is very stressful. Okay, this is Hannah Bastardi, and she's a first grade teacher at Kingstown Elementary School. And the neat story about Hannah, she started with these two children at the beginning of the year. Well, right about Christmas, the mom of the little girl went back to work. So at the beginning of the year, her mom could pick her up. And so, but then the mom goes back to work and she doesn't have, transportation because her mom had to go back to work. So then she starts being a bus rider. Well, the bus riders can't stay late after school to get tutoring. And so luckily with Hannah, once we got the little boy out, we were able to put the little girl in that morning slot because buses get there early. And she was able to finish up her lessons with her. And she was able to read on grade level when I read with her the other day. So I was just so glad about that. And here's Hannah Bastardi's reading recovery teacher, Devin Mitchell, who, again, these teachers are supporting them so they can learn throughout the year. All right, and this is Heather Eatman, and Heather is from Pleasant Knoll Elementary School, and she's a reading interventionist. I mean, this lady's got a little baby, she's got a husband, she moved, and she took Miss White's class, so hey. So here are some children, that she's worked with this year as a reading interventionist, and Chad Allen. Thank God for Chad Allen and Susan Kidd, my reading recovery teacher, for supporting her this year and helping her be successful. All right. Now this is Heather Howard to me for the rest of my life. Well, Heather Howard got married during my class, which blows my mind. I'm like a 6-year-old. Okay, so this is Heather Howard Lewis, and Heather Howard Lewis is from Orchard Park Elementary School, and she's a kindergarten teacher there. Okay, so she comes to me at the beginning of the year and said, well, Jamie, I might miss the class because I'm getting married. I'm like, well, that's okay. I'm not that mean. You can miss the class because you're getting married. So here's Heather teaching one of her children. Here's another one, and teaching these kids, in the morning and the afternoon. And here is her support. Amy Roaring at Orchard Park is my reading recovery teacher, and Matthew Johnson is the principal, and I just thank them for all they do to support our teachers. All right, my next one. Here is Sarah Lanford, and Sarah Lanford is a first grade teacher at Sugar Creek. And Sarah has taught for many years, and this is like our rock star kid, Mayor. This kid, he's got that name, and I know why he got that name. He's definitely one of our favorites. And one day during his lesson, we talk about you're kissing your brain. Every time you do something right, you're kissing your brain, you're kissing your brain. So what does he write? I was so focused and quick that I got a brain kiss. So he's drinking my Kool-Aid. I love it. And so here is Lucy, and she's reading with another child, and this is somebody that Sarah's been working with. And Sarah had a unique kind of opportunity because she's a classroom teacher in first grade, and 2 of the kids she worked with first wave were her kids from her classroom. So not only did she get to work with them one-on-one, but then she got to see them the rest of the day in her room and kind of knew what they were able to do individually and trying to carry it over in the classroom. So that was kind of a really neat experience for her. And okay, here we are. This is mid-year. We went out to celebrate after our final exam for first semester. So, they had been studying for an exam. They still look pretty good. They made it halfway there. Okay. All right, and this is Kayla Keller. And Kayla is from Debbie's Bridge Elementary School. And she's a first grade teacher. And this is one of the students that she's worked with. Here's another one. And also she's worked with this little boy. And here are her support, Catherine Murr, my reading recovery teacher over at Debbie's Bridge, and then Mandy Coobs at Debbie's Bridge. Okay, this is my next one, Stephanie McClung from Sugar Creek Elementary. And she is a kindergarten teacher as well. Here's a child that she's worked with and another child she's worked with. And here is Amy Milan. She is from Sugar Creek Elementary School as well, kindergarten teacher. And here's a student that she's worked with and was a twin. It's always interesting when you get twins. And here's another student that she was worked with. Here's Michelle Powell. She is a kindergarten teacher from Sugar Creek Elementary. And here are the students that she has worked with. Okay, so this is at graduation. We had 4 classroom teachers from Sugar Creek Elementary this year. So think of the impact that can make at that school. And of course, they could not do it without Michelle Greitz, the principal. I mean, when you start thinking about 4 teachers not doing duty, I mean, think about stuff like that. I mean, they're teaching kids during duty time and the scheduling of getting all this situated. 4 teachers. 4 teachers at the end of the school day teaching kids after the bell rings. So, Michelle Greitz, you are my shero. All right. And then we've got 2 reading recovery teachers there. So, Cooper Smith and Courtney Burt, just thinking about all the kids we tested to figure out who these lowest children were that needed assistance. So just a great thing for that school. All right, and this is Lena Robertson, and Lena is an interventionist, and she is at Springfield Elementary School, and so she was able to serve her children during the school day, and of course, Adam, he had to support all this. I've also got 2 reading recovery teachers there, Heather Ryan and Emily Heitkamp, and then she got married, Emily Heitkamp, and it starts with an F. Anyway, she's Emily Heitkamp to me. She's there, and here's Danielle Van Bibber. All right, so Danielle is at Fort Mill Elementary School. I go to see her the first day when I go, first grade teacher. I walk in, I'm like, you're in my room. She was in my room where I taught first grade forever at Fort Mill Elementary. You are now my BFF. You are in my room. So here are some children that she has worked with this year as a first grade teacher. And here's her support, Tracy Simpson. And then we had Darlene, and she came to help us at graduation. And we also have the amazing Jad Griffin. He was probably working on his literacy picnic extravaganza for tomorrow so he can win. You know how competitive Jad is. All right, so now this was the final picture. This was after the last day of class. Pure joy. That's all we can say. I mean, it was 30 days of classes every Thursday for the rest of your life, it seemed like. And then they came to school early in August to get their training for OS testing. So by this time, they were sick of Jamie White. So that was the absolute pure joy there on the last day of class. So here we are at graduation yesterday. We're all in. We made it. Congratulations.
Hi, I'm Cece Bates. I'm a professor of literacy education and the trainer and director for the Clemson University Early Literacy Center.
And I'm Mary Ann McBride, teacher leader at the Clemson University Early Literacy Training Center.
And on behalf of the center, the South Carolina Department of Education, and the South Carolina Reading Recovery Advisory Council, we are excited to congratulate you on the completion of the Reading Recovery or Early Literacy coursework and training that you completed during the 2021-2022 academic year. As you know now, it is quite an undertaking, and we are so very proud of your commitment to your ongoing professional learning.
This year has once again certainly presented a unique set of challenges and opportunities. We are so proud of the dedication and determination you have shown. Your work has benefited hundreds of South Carolina children, their families, and your schools. We are proud of you and the teacher leaders who have worked tirelessly with you and your students. Please rest and relax and enjoy a well-earned summer.
As you move forward next year, please let us know how we can support you.
Thanks so much, and again, our best wishes.
I can't believe they didn't say go Tigers.
waiting for it.
I am so disappointed. Go Tigers! All right. Thank you to Dr. Epps, Peter Olinger, and the Fort Mill School Board for all of your support in years past to our most vulnerable students. And I can proudly say reading recovery makes a difference in children's lives every day. And there's just so many, we're so lucky to be in this school district. We really are. There's so many people that help me. Oh my gosh, Tom Buckley with transportation. If a kid can't get behind the glass, he's helping me. Him and Tammy Dees trying to find a kid a ride, you know. Just Annette Chinchilla. I mean, opening her school, letting these teachers come in every Thursday, messing up a little bit, having the cleaning crew come in. I mean, there's just so many people that help with getting our key cards so the teachers can come in free on Thursday without having to go through the office. All the principals and what all they have to do to make this work. All the literacy coaches and how they cover classes and just help us so much to get this accomplished. And all the lead teachers, there's many lead teachers that go in and cover a class in the morning while they're finishing their lesson. So it really is a district-wide effort, and I just appreciate it so much. And last thing, tomorrow is the Fort Mill Rotary Literacy Picnic for all first graders, and it's scheduled from 4 to 7 at the amphitheater, and we're so excited about it. I know Jad is probably working right now because they get $500, the elementary school that has the most school spirit. So I don't know what Jad's going to wear, but I know it's going to be good. All right. Well, thank you for your time, and I'm so super proud of these ladies.
Let me join Jamie on behalf of the board and the administration in thanking you. I know that's your passion and your time you put into the course. I know Jamie's a tough drill instructor. I know you earned your certificate, so to speak, but I know you do it because you want to do it and you want to help children. And I want to thank you for your effort. That's what we have here in Fort Mill School District. And I also want to thank, everybody knows that without a good leader, it's not going to happen. So let's give Jamie White a round of applause for that.
You're welcome to come back afterwards, but we understand.
A late school night, right?
Right.
Right?
All right, well, that's a tough act to follow, especially with something as exciting as minutes.
Right?
So our next agenda item, we have 2 sets of minutes from April 5th and April 19th that you guys have had a chance to look over. I'll first ask about April 5th. Were there any adjustments or corrections? If not, those will stand as approved. And April 19th, any adjustments or corrections? All right, then those are also approved with unanimous consent. Ms. Pettis, do we have any public participation? We do not tonight. Okay. Then our next set of stuff is staff reports, starting with Ms. Lordo, a couple things with impact fees, financials, and budgets.
Couple things tonight. Good evening. Going to start with the monthly financials included in your packet. Were the monthly financial reports for the period ended March 31. We are have completed the 9th month. We're 3/4 of the way through the fiscal year, believe it or not. Total revenues as of that a month-end date were $142,351,749. Expenditures, $122,453,018. So as we would expect, we were in a positive cash flow of $19.8 million. We are now in the period of primarily vehicle tax collections and some delinquent, but we had no significant delinquent real estate collections for the month of March. So that just reinforces why having that positive cash flow is so important. When we get to this point in the fiscal year, we are dependent on that as we go through the remaining months to finish our year. Vehicle tax collections were as expected, slightly over $1 million. They were $1,099,554. As I've shared with you, we typically are in the range of $800 to $1 million per month now on vehicle taxes. We did have, you may have noticed, we had a new line item under local other taxes. This is the rental surcharge revenue that we are now receiving quarterly from York County. This was for the quarter ended January 31st that went from the state to the county and was remitted to the school district. And our amount was $333,710. So that gives you some idea of what to expect now going forward each quarter. And in looking at where we are year to date with tax revenue, I am still estimating that we will finish this fiscal year about $1.5 million over our budgeted property tax revenue amount for this year. That was all that I saw related to the monthly financial report, and now I'll open it up for any questions that you have.
I do.
Okay?
Ms. Loader, a question that's in tis the tax season. Could you elaborate for the viewers, countywide taxes?
Sure. So countywide tax collections are based on a 30 mil countywide tax in York County. 1 mil of that goes to York School District because they are the lowest poverty district, and that is by law when the countywide tax millage was imposed. And the other remaining 29 mils get shared among the 4 districts based on our average daily membership at the 135th day. We receive an estimate throughout the year based on last year's 135th day, and we will now, basically the county will reconcile that and square it up for everybody's 135th day this school year.
And you said the lowest poverty. They're the highest poverty.
Oh, I'm sorry, the highest poverty. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. The highest poverty district.
Ms. Lorda, similarly, would you expand on the rental tax for the public so they understand?
Sure. So rental surcharge came into law in 2017, and that is where a company, for us, it is related to Sunbelt Rentals, where they are over 50% heavy equipment rental. And in lieu of filing a property tax return, such as a PT 100 or PT 300 with the State Department of Revenue, they submit collections. They collect 2.5% above their rental charges, and they remit that to the state, which then gets remitted to the taxing entities within that jurisdiction of where that company is located. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That is to my
I wanna be
understanding to the
confused.
best
It's
that I
not,
can, yes.
Residential rentals or something.
Correct. It is commercial rentals of heavy equipment.
And then, of course, we have the other line here, Act 388 property tax.
Yes.
Can you expound on that, please?
Sure. So that is, I'll say, supposed to be the replacement fund for when the state enacted Act 388 and homeowners like ourselves no longer pay school operating taxes. We only pay debt millage. This was intended to be the replacement fund to school districts for what we were going to be not receiving from homeowners. It has not been maintained at the level to meet that, especially in a district like ours that is extremely high in growth with residential. I have not looked at that currently, but we are short annually in the 20 million range, in excess of 20 million a year on that.
What we would have collected.
What we would have collected, if every homeowner was paying school operating millage, we would be collecting in excess of 20 million more than what this fund is bringing into us from the state. It is increased. It is increased slightly every year, but not at that same rate as a district like ours is growing in residential growth.
Thank you.
You're going to talk about the budget in a minute, so
Yes.
maybe you want to talk about it there. But does that, I assume that changes with the new formula that's going to be introduced, or that has been introduced for next year?
This piece of revenue does not change with the new formula. Correct. The new formula is specifically only addressing EFA and EIA categories and does not change the taxing structure.
Okay.
Yet. Yet. Other questions on the monthly?
Local revenue, I do.
Local revenue. The
Interest and investments.
interest on investments, yes. Ooh, that one's painful. Painful to all of us personally with what's happened in the market, the interest rate market. We do choose to invest with the South Carolina investment pool. Actually, our accounts are held, our primary accounts with property taxes and state allocations come through the county first. All of those funds are invested with the South Carolina Local Government Investment Pool because that is our best avenue collectively with all state entities that choose to pool their money together. That is under the direct supervision of the South Carolina State Treasurer's Office. And so we are subject to the fluctuation in the market rates with those funds. We only draw those funds down. Well, we draw them down weekly for our accounts payable, paying invoices, vendors. We draw them down monthly for payroll as well.
Okay, yep.
But the majority of the school district's investments are held in the South Carolina local investment pool, subject to the market for interest. Okay, we'll move on to impact fees. Total collections to date through the close of business yesterday were $50,906,198. So we are just shy of 51 million as of yesterday. Single family units, we've collected on 1,921. Multifamily, 1,334, or a total of 3,255. April, we brought on 16 homes and 20 multifamily. So April was a month where we had a large day for apartments that came on in one day.
All townhouses.
We collected about 200,000 in one day on apartments. Looking at our comparable data for the 12-month rolling, we are still about 47% less than we were for April 2020 to April 2021, and we're about 83% more in multifamily because if you remember, in February, we had a 2.7 million day for apartments where multiple apartment buildings came on in one day. So that is somewhat swaying our 12-month comparable data as we roll it. We're still about 83%. Our 2021 average monthly collections are 800,000. April was slightly down at 531,000 with April.
And Leanne, the numbers that you're citing of units don't include the ones that are at a $0 because they're the age.
The age restricted,
Right, so there are
correct.
more units potentially.
Correct.
being
There are
bought.
more units. These are only, that's a great point, these are only the paying units, not the units that were waived for either age restriction or I've seen a good many lately where it was a replacement. The home was torn down and rebuilt
Well, and
as
when
a
you think about
replacement.
what those communities are, you're talking about Carolina Orchards, you're talking about Millbank, you're talking about Windhaven. Those are the three big ones. Cadence has finished up, so Cadence, and they're not technically age targeted, so Cadence was paying, but those other three have not. And those
So
are.
I'm
decent
seeing,
sized.
I see those periodically now, probably more frequently. And you as board members, when you saw the full monthly report, it probably stood out even more.
There's a bunch on there.
How many of those that we're seeing come through.
That's good. I mean, I think that's good for
Yeah.
our community. We need more of that.
Yep.
That's good for us.
Absolutely.
Win-win.
I'd like to design some of that.
And then we're going to get into the budget discussion, but I did want to share that outside of our local budget, in the House and Senate, both versions of the budget, the teacher supply funds that have been at $275 per teacher for a good while. It is proposed that that's going to go to $300 per teacher next year. And teachers do receive that at least by their first contract day. We generally try to issue those checks. We actually do direct deposit. We try to do that prior to the sales tax-free holiday. But by law, it has to be issued by the teacher's first contract date. But we feel like that will probably stay in the final version of the budget, that they will increase that to $300. I have not heard that that is a large discussion item. Okay?
You want to keep going?
Keep going? Okay. Yes.
In general?
So tonight, I'm going to share where, as best we can tell, where we think the state is, and then where we are locally, primarily on the recommended expenditure side. Let's see if we can. I'm going to start out as far as with the state. Last week, the Senate passed their version of the budget, which the education piece, there were very little changes from what I had previously reported and what you've probably read that the Senate Finance Committee recommended to the full Senate. There was not a lot of discussion on the Senate floor. The parts that I watched, it was primarily the committee reports, and the Senate adopted the budget. There were probably more, I guess, questions and modifications and deletions related to provisos than the actual budget. So as far as the education piece, the Senate adopted the recommended state teacher salary scale increase of $2,000 per cell. As you might remember, the House version increased it $4,000, but the Senate version increases it $2,000. Districts are not required to increase their teacher pay if you are a district that already pays over $38,000, which we are. Our beginning teacher salary currently is $41,400, but we do have to provide the step increase that is required. So the $38,000 does not impact the step increases. Districts are still required to provide their teachers the step increase for an additional year of experience. Each district, the Senate version, which is different than the House version, is that the education funding will now be split into two different portions. The first being each district is going to receive the same amount that we receive in this fiscal year, and they are calling it, you'll see this referred to as the stake in the ground funding. And the stake in the ground funding is going to still be the various line items that we discussed at the last meeting rolled up. So it's the EFA-based student cost funding. It is several items of EIA funding, such as teacher salary supplement, teacher salary fringe, at-risk funding, and I believe there's one more. They're rolling those up into one number, and that's going to be your stake in the ground funding. The new education funding of $27 million that's being put in is going to be distributed based on the new funding formula. So it will be based on our proportional number of weighted pupil units, and some of the weightings have changed and a few of the weightings have been deleted. It will be based on our proportional units of pupils based on the state as a whole. It is going to conference committee May 10th through 12th, but I'll also share the House went ahead and passed a continuing resolution just in case the conference committee does not come to an agreement and the budget's not passed by June 30th. We have heard some speculation that the discussions may be extended to the middle of June, and I think that's why the House was leery and wanted to go ahead and pass the continuing resolution. The Senate, the State Finance Office had promised districts that they would send our allocations based on the Senate Finance version by last Friday. Last Friday, they came out and said, nope, we're going to go another week because we want to give you your stake in the ground funding. This is their exact wording. We want to give you your stake in the ground funding based on the 135-day data. And they said, we need another week to run those numbers. So that's why we have not received our allocations, and we are scheduled to receive them by this Friday. So we are anxiously waiting on that number. I have seen some of you share with me some projections that you've seen. We know that's not the final, so we're waiting on the official projections that hopefully we will have the end of this week. For that reason, tonight I'm mainly going to share with you what the administration has determined will be our recommendation for expenditures. The revenue side is so dependent on what the state allocations are, and you will certainly need to consider what that number is, and we're all hopeful it's going to be much better than the House version. We know it's going to be better. We're just hoping it's much better. That will certainly, I think, come into play with your discussions about, are you going to fund all the items we're recommending, and what's your comfort level with tax millage increases as well as pulling out of contingency reserve. So that's mainly what I want to share tonight. But any questions about what we're hearing at the state level before we move on to our expenditures?
Yes. So for
Okay.
acute clarity,
Okay?
that 4,000 number I thought I heard is non-existent.
It was the governor's recommended education budget plan, and there was miscommunication to the public that that would be fully funded by the state and that every teacher would receive a state-funded $4,000 increase. We ran the numbers for Fort Mill School District. For us to implement $4,000 across the board for our teachers would cost $7.7 million. And at the House version of the budget, we were initially losing $6 million. And then they agreed to hold us harmless to the same level we are this year. But we would still have been in excess of $7 million short to fund the $4,000.
That doesn't include the step increase.
That does not include the step increase, only the $4,000 per sale.
So then,
Well, I was saying, but to be clear, that is still the House version.
That is still the House
What
version.
you just talked about most of this time was the more recent Senate version.
Correct.
And I think that's where this second to last bullet point on here that talks about the conference committee is so important, because we don't know as board members or as citizens what will happen coming out of that conference committee, the 10th through the 12th, right?
Correct. Correct.
Also, I thought I understood that 4,000 actually wasn't intended to be across the board. It was to get the minimum
Correct.
sale
That's how
up
it
to
ended up.
40,000.
Correct. It was to get districts that were not currently paying 40,000, which I believe there are 50-something districts that don't pay 40,000. It was intended to fund those districts at a higher level so that they would be able to increase their teacher pay up to the 40,000. It was just, the communication was very confusing.
And to bring those districts up to that 40,000 was not doing anything for the districts such as ours that pays in excess of what the state minimum is anyway. We were told, too bad for you.
Correct.
And I thought it was the other way around. I thought there was 50 that did and 27 that didn't. Maybe I have it backwards. But
Right.
But regardless, some of the ones, I use Chester just because it stuck with me, they were only $40 short.
Right.
So it wasn't like even in Chester where they were under the 40,000 mark that it was necessarily a guaranteed $4,000 raise.
Right.
Correct.
Differential.
There were, I don't know the exact number, but there are a good many districts, I know from just talking to my colleagues across the state, there are a good many districts that were in that situation where they were over 36,000, but they weren't quite at 40. Yes. Any other questions about the state?
So talk
Okay.
just for a second about
Sure.
conference committee. So the process, they will get together and we think in theory, if it all goes well, then on the 12th, they will have arm wrestled and come out with a compromise.
Correct. And then I believe the process is it then goes back to both the House and the Senate for approval based on the conference committee's recommendation.
Okay.
Yes. From what we're hearing, we feel like the education piece is probably going to be agreed upon. That the real issues are related to the discussion of the tax cuts and the tax credits for individuals in South Carolina. That's where the discussion will center around those issues.
But the conference committee has to sort out the entire budget.
Correct.
Even if nothing changes and they adopt the Senate version as is, it all still has to be agreed upon and then go back to the two chambers, right?
Correct. That is my understanding of the process. And I believe that is why I heard that the House went ahead and passed the continuing resolution just in case. But to my knowledge, the Senate did not do that.
It then goes to the governor.
And then it goes to the governor.
Typically vetoes several
Yes.
items, had to come back together.
Yes.
At some point, we get to the finish line.
Yeah, at the end of June.
Well, not always.
Last year, we didn't get to the finish line, and we had a
Continuing resolution.
continuing resolution all the way to September or something.
Correct.
Okay.
But I think our recommendation to you would be to pass the local budget, and then you certainly have the option to make any amendments to the budget later this summer if something substantially changes in our plan.
But does this alter the timeline that we had previously laid out of our
Yes.
internal budget process?
On our timeline, our plan timeline, consistent with prior years, we normally have our public hearing on the budget at the second meeting in May. My recommendation would be that we shift that back 2 weeks, because in order to have our public hearing on May 24th, we would need to advertise in the newspaper by this weekend. And I would prefer that we not do that, because quite honestly, I'm just not sure what numbers to put out there until we see these state allocations because of this new funding formula. So I would recommend that you shift out the public hearing on the budget 2 weeks for that reason, to the June 7th meeting, so that we can be more accurate in what we're putting out to our taxpayers as what we think the budget numbers are going to be. There's nothing in the law that says what we publish has to be the final budget, but generally we feel a little better about it than we do this year with the revenue side. And for that reason, I think it would serve us well to push that out 2 weeks.
Makes sense to me.
Okay? So let's talk about our recommended expenditures, and there's a lot of data, but I like this visual with the columns, and you'll see why as I go through this. Our Category 1 priorities, and this is after meeting with our principals, meeting with our department heads, looking at the numbers, reevaluating now based on what we think is going to happen with the teacher salary scale, and at the state level. But I think most of the Category 1, you will not be surprised. Our Category 1 priority items are generally things that are required by law or to be in compliance, or what I call cash out the door, where we're going to incur these expenses such as utility cost. We're going to pay those expenses, and I feel like we need to plan for that in Category 1. But just going down this list, salary step increase for all employees, that is required by state law. The South Carolina retirement system, This is to fund the additional 1% this year. And just for information, we are now up to the employer cost. So for every employee, we have to put in 24.08% of their salary into the retirement system. 24.08%. The next item, bus drivers. This is in both House and Senate versions of the budget, that the bus drivers will receive a 5% increase plus the 3% that all state employees. So bus drivers will receive an 8% salary increase over their starting hourly pay this year. And that is, I put in parentheses, that's required. Then the fourth item is the health insurance increase is 18.1% for next year. I will share that the retirement system increase and the health insurance increase are supposed to be state funded, but they are going to be rolled into these allocation numbers. It will not be a separate line item where we can see that the retirement system increase cost for us is 1.7 million. That's what we're getting from the state. It's going to be rolled in to the allocation numbers. So it'll be very difficult.
So that 3 million we just got to trust is in there somewhere.
Correct.
Losing transparency.
Yep,
Correct.
on the receiving end.
Yes.
So could I ask a question, Leanne? or-
Sure.
So this is regarding the employee health insurance.
Okay.
So my interpretation is we're about 18% increase.
Yes.
Is that correct? So I'm curious, what last 3 or 4 years, what's the average increase?
3.5%.
Wow,
3.5%.
wow.
That's why everyone's been very upset about this. It is a significantly higher percentage increase.
3 to 18%.
Do you know why it's so high?
Interesting.
I do not know why it's so high.
I know all health insurance has been
yes.
going up, but I am not aware of
A particular
a
jump.
significant jump just in this 1 year, so.
I know that there have been years where they tried to minimize the increase. They've certainly, like, there's no planned employee increases, and so they basically shift that over to the employers. I know they've also tried to add some services to their plan. And I'm sure, like all insurance, is probably based on historical claims and what they've had to pay out as well.
The last couple of
COVID.
years, yeah.
So it is a much higher increase with the promise that it's going to be funded for next year. Yes. And then we have the Social Security and Workers' Comp increase. The next item are the 20 teachers that you committed to for us early on to go out and start recruiting. 20 new classroom teachers. I believe those slots have all been filled. We are basing that on a new teacher at a master's degree and 10 years experience. So that's $86,830 with these benefits is what we use for that.
Trued up once we know the exact
Correct.
individuals.
Correct.
And for the public's perspective, that number's a lot less this year, coming year, than in the past several years, largely because we're reabsorbing.
The number of new teachers,
Oh, the
Yeah.
20.
Yeah,
the 20.
We're reabsorbing teachers from the virtual academy.
We have been at 50 to 60 new teachers in the last couple years.
Well, also with opening of schools when you need the extra, all the extra positions, not just teachers.
Correct. Correct. The next three items are positions that we currently have that are paid out of what we call a special revenue fund, that those funds will no longer be available, no funding there next year, so we will need to shift those positions to the general fund. The first one is our teachers that are in at-risk funding. That's a category that's going to be rolled up into the big number, the stake in the ground number. So we will have to shift those teachers. The next item, we have a position still under our ESSER 1 CARES Act that we will need to shift in. And then we have 2 ELL teachers in our ESSER 2 that we will need to shift in for next year. The next 3 items are related to special ed services. These are I can share with you, the special ed request budget is always several $1 million. This is the absolute we've got to have to be in compliance. This is me going back to Dr. Massiars and saying, I need your bottom line for this list. So we need to add 3 special setting classroom teachers, 7 special ed assistants, and an additional speech language position to meet her compliance requirements for projected caseloads next year. The next item is our growth in our per student supply allocations. Each school is allocated $100 per student. That's what I call their school budget. So that is based on our projected number of students by school for next year. The next 2 items are in the technology area, instructional technology and network engineering licenses. These are existing contracts that are based on either the number of students we have, the number of teachers we have, or a couple things that we have previously paid out of ESSER funds that we're now having to pick up in the general fund as well.
A question for you there.
Okay?
Not a big number in the big scheme of things, or a small number in the big scheme of things. So what does this technology software encompass? I'm curious.
There's probably 20 different instructional and really networking software programs that we use. But I'll give you a couple examples. One is ClassLink. One is Google for Ed.
Yep.
Seesaw.
Yep.
You might recall we had Seesaw on ESSER 1. Gaggle, which Gaggle is a software that monitors our student email accounts and alerts administrators. There's a call order or an email order depending on the concern of something they see in a student email accounts. It might go to a guidance counselor, something that will that Gaggle feels like the school administration may want to address with a student. It may be wording related to bullying, could be potential suicide concerns, violence, things like that.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
So I think it has been very effective from what we've had that several years. I think it's been very effective.
And it also prevents them from accessing things that they shouldn't be.
Correct. So it's based on how many students we have. So the contract has an inflationary increase based on our number of student emails projected for next year.
Got it. Thank you.
And then the last 2 items are facilities related, utilities, cleaning, and insurance. We increased our cleaning starting salary last year to be competitive with surrounding districts, but we were seeing our cleaning vendor was seeing such a turnover with staffing going next door to another district. And so we felt like we needed to make sure that we were staying in the market pricing for cleaning. Utilities, we're just continuing to see the increase there with bringing on all these new schools so quickly with utility cost. And then maintenance, repair, supplies, I'll share with you that number could be double easily. We monitor that very close and we're very careful, but it takes a lot to maintain 20 schools, plus the other district office facility, the maintenance transportation facility every year. So category 1, that is compliance related, contract related, state law required related. Category 2 is our projected cost related to, we would like to increase our teachers, the $2,000 per cell, even though we're not required. We would like to increase our starting teacher salary from $41,400 to $43,400. It is a 4.8% cost of living increase. And then teachers would also receive their step increase, which is an average 2%. this would still put us in the 14 to 15% range for our local supplement, if we are able to fund the $2,000 per teacher.
Which keeps us, to the best of our knowledge today anyway, at one of the highest paying districts in the state. And we obviously don't know
Correct.
what everybody else is going to do with their salary scales, but
Correct.
I think most districts we're learning are doing the 2,000.
so it'll keep
Yes.
us
I
in
think it's
line
gonna
with
all be
others.
relative.
Yes.
Yep.
At least locally, in our local group, we think this is what everyone is generally trying to fund next year.
I think I read some others as well.
Yeah. And then the second item under category 2 is a 3% cost of living for our support and admin. That would include our cafeteria workers. Remember, bus drivers are getting 8%. But this will match what the state is doing for all state employees, because they are providing a 3% cost of living for state employees. And you can see we've calculated the related fringe cost on,
Those are for the employees who are not on a specific teacher scale.
correct. All other district employees that are not on the teacher pay scale.
Because that one is an automatic of two.
Correct.
Of a cell plus maybe the.
Correct. And then category 3 are a few items that we as an administration would like you to consider funding. This is after a lot of discussion about truly what are the highest needs for next year and what will serve and support all the schools next year. The first thing is, we've discussed this, I believe, with you at the board retreat, the need to have a director of educator effectiveness, recruitment, and retention, just as we're continuing to see less and less students going into education. It's so important to be on top of that and having someone 100% devoted to those areas. We think that is also in our strategic plan. We think that is extremely important and would benefit all 20 schools. The second item is to move our special ed assistants, move them from a 185-day contract to a 190-day contract. Dr. Maziarz has requested those 5 additional days to provide some extensive training. We are continuing to see a lot of turnover in special ed assistants, and we feel like by having that opportunity to provide that training and work with them outside of their 185-day contract would help alleviate some of that turnover.
Another retention component.
Absolutely.
I think, Liza, we've had 31 leave from day one this year. Now, we may have replaced some of them, but we've had 31 special ed assistants. So it is a retention.
Would the 10
Strategy.
days above the 180, I know they're at 185 today, be the same 10 days as our teachers? So as in the 5 days at the beginning plus the 5 work days, or are they a different subset of 10 days just based on the professional development that's needed?
I'm not sure. We can get back to you on that.
I just don't know if it was the same general schedule or if they have a whole different set of those, what those 5 days would be used for.
My guess is they're the same.
Yeah, that's what I would guess.
That would be my guess, and that they would set up the training if they were bringing in trainers for those days as well. The next item are 2 additional lawn care staff for the maintenance department. As we continue to add these schools so quickly, we have not added lawn care. And actually, the request was for 4, and I talked them down to 2.
They just need wider mowers.
They need something.
Bigger mowers.
And we cannot even contract that out to a lawn care company during the heavy cutting season. We've tried that avenue as well, just to bring in some help seasonally. And there's just not enough lawn cutters out there. So this is kind of what we consider bare minimum to keep up our facilities. The next item is an additional support position for Catawba Ridge High School. When we opened Catawba Ridge High School, you may recall, we did not fully staff that, and we have tried to add on as we have increased the student population there. This would be an additional support position. I believe in talking to Mr. Wilson would support attendance part-time, athletics part-time, and maybe some other area. We did an analysis. Human Resources did a current analysis of the 3 high schools, and we are definitely short still at Catawba Ridge High School in additional support staff positions. We went down every position and matched them up, and we were definitely short. And this has been a very high priority for Catawba Ridge for really the last 2 years, and we have put it off, hadn't made the list. So with their increase now in student population, we feel like this is important to fund this for next year. And then the last item, curriculum had a list of additions that they would like as we've continued, or we've tried to continue expanding our curriculum department because we're still the smallest curriculum department in the state for a district our size. And we've tried to continue to expand that department to support, once again, all the schools. And this is their number one priority, is a coordinator of science for K through 12.
So again, Leanne, maybe I misinterpreted what you said. You
Okay.
said we are the what again?
We have the smallest curriculum department for a district our size across the state.
Interesting.
Yes.
Very lean.
Very lean. Very lean. I am accurate in that, right? Curriculum? Okay.
By far.
By far, yes.
We run a tight ship.
Yes.
Where administration is concerned.
Yes.
Put it into the class.
So there are multiple additional positions and content areas that they would like to add, but this was their highest priority request for next year. And the schools fully supported this as well. Just if you're curious, well, if we get a lot of state money, what would be the next thing? And I'll just share the number one request from elementary schools, all the elementary principals, is to start implementing a position, MTSS specialist, which would be on the teacher salary scale. It would be somewhat like the role. The concern is that right now the lead teacher is not only serving their responsibilities, but now they have picked up MTSS responsibilities, and they're having to somewhat serve dual roles. And the elementary principals are very concerned about that. And so they are requesting a phase-in of that, possibly adding 2 or 3 MTSS specialist teachers, and then just multiple years add on till we were able to have one at elementary school.
For the public,
Yes.
elaborate on that acronym.
Okay. I might need someone to help me on this one. Peter. Yes, multi-tiered support system. Yes. But did I explain that adequately of what the issue is with the lead teachers, Peter? Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
I would say, again, to the benefit, the additional support for students at varying levels of being behind. There's multi-tiers of support, and somebody has to coordinate that to know which students need which things at every school. And so right now, sounds like that's falling on the lead.
And apparently there is a lot of documentation required, and it's the documentation piece that is, yes, thank you. Yes, and it's falling on the lead teachers.
If we had 3, we would start at the highest need schools.
The most kids on MTSS.
So they wouldn't be shared with schools, we're just gonna start them.
I think they'd rather start them at the highest need, the Title Is, and go up, yeah.
Since we're pushing back 2 weeks,
Yes.
at the next meeting later in May, can that be like a 3A line item that you could, or a 3B line item that you could put there just so we could see the cost on that?
Sure, sure. It is basically this person, because we had a lot of discussion, does this need to be a teacher? Could a support person help with some of the paperwork? And the elementary principals and curriculum department felt like, no, if we're going to do this program, we need to have a teacher with that background. So that would basically be at the $86,830 per position.
250-ish.
Yes, yes. So just as you're thinking about how we set this up, column 1, 2, 3, column 1, based on where we think the revenue projections from the state could come in, what happened with the House, what we think could happen with the Senate, we can most likely fund column 1. We can most likely fund the step. We could not fund the $2,000 increase for teachers without a tax millage increase, based on what we've gotten so far. But we're hopeful. We're hopeful that we're going to see more revenue that's going to help with that. But I would be very surprised if it would fully fund column 1 and 2. So if you do the math, $4,910,000 in column 2, we're using $300,000 as the value of a mill for operations next year. That's 16 mills. You, by law, based on Act 388 funding formula, can increase 21 mills. I believe I shared that at the last meeting. You have the authority to increase 21 mills. So the more state revenue that comes in, the less millage we would need for column 2. Column 3 is roughly $600,000, so that's 2 mills. But if the state revenue comes in higher, then we can reduce the millage requirement, or we could add the MTSS support.
So we'll have an idea at our next meeting.
Correct.
Right, yeah, we'll have an idea at our next meeting of 2 things. One, we'll have those numbers, because you're supposed to get those on Friday, of
Correct.
what the Senate's numbers are, but it will be post-conference committee to at least have some idea if those numbers then have changed again, because maybe it's not exactly the same as the Senate,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
We'll have all of that to look at.
Correct.
Ms. Lorda?
Yes.
I think it would be real helpful for us if we're even looking out in the next 2 years and understanding the amount, the number of the positions that are currently in the ESSER funding categories that will need to be reabsorbed into the general fund. And I think those phase out within the next 2 years. But I
They
don't
do
have
start in
visibility.
the next 2 years, so I will be glad to share that as well with you,
I think that-
because I think that is an excellent point, and that sort of leads into the last thing I want to touch on tonight is just because I know a lot of times you are interested in where we are currently with the contingency reserve fund. So we started this year with a little over $12 million. We have spent $36,294 on impact fee litigation, and we have to pay York County an annual fee of $50,000 to collect our impact fees. We also, in our 21-22 budget, we will be pulling in $5,250,000, which was for the opening of Forest Creek Middle School. And so we are probably looking at a balance at June 30 of $6.7 million in that range at the end of June. As far as for 22-23, this is another item you will need to think about, is based on the state allocations, how much, if any, do you want to pull out again next year? Because it's very hard to absorb a middle school coming on in 1 year. But depending on the state allocations, if our new number was enough, we could possibly not pull any of this and hold on to it. Or do you want to pull a portion of this as well?
And
And I just put in 2,625,000, which is half. Mr. Murphy, your question's great because I would like to bring those numbers to you for consideration of what we're going to be facing in 23, 24, and then certainly 24, 25 with having to pull in positions that are currently in ESSER 2 and ESSER 3.
If tax revenue collections stay on par with where you're at, you think that we will have an increase, which would then do one of two things. I mean, it's a counting thing, so you can do it however you want, because you're the boss where that's at. You would not transfer 5.2 from the contingency fund, you would transfer, let's call it 4.
Right, we could.
Or we would transfer 5.2 and then turn around and transfer back.
That's what I would
2.
do. Yes,
You do it however you
yes,
want. It's the same difference to me.
right.
Okay.
Right. So we could potentially add a little bit. If we don't need that year-end excess to fund the $2,000.
Right.
I know we've had some thought about that as well, depending on where the state ends up. If they would come back with a higher teacher salary, we might have to use it towards that. But this is an optional source of revenue that I just want you to be thinking about. So we're really between the state revenue, taxes, and potentially pulling some off of this, even though remember this is one-time money, not recurring.
Well, and the contingency fund also factors into our bond rating
Correct.
when that time presents itself again, that we have to go out for bonds. If we don't have that
Does
money.
this, or does our reserve fund?
Both.
So
Both.
This does.
Yes. The bond rating agencies, we have a good bit of discussion just about how we are addressing the growth and how we are addressing the construction of so many new schools so quickly and the operating cost of that. So maintaining our fund balance in the general fund is critical. And they're very complimentary of your management of that and adhering to a balanced budget every year. And they understand why we have this set up in the pieces that we are pulling in. And the fact that we're monitoring this at somewhat of a conservative level, knowing that these are non-recurring dollars. Just for thought before next time. Okay?
Well, thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
Look forward to seeing how this continues to play out the next couple of weeks. We do have one additional staff report, a construction management discussion. I don't know, Mr. Romanek, you're going to start this off?
Good evening. Last time we met, we spoke about construction management services, what it entailed, how we went about looking for a firm, and we spoke about Light in the Management Group. And after that meeting, I thought about a few questions that came to mind for me because there were some questions asked. So what I did was I spoke to Mr. Jim Britton, asked him to come tonight to speak with Light in the Management Group, provide responsibilities and such of what they'll be doing for us. I'm not going to make a recommendation tonight, but I want you to hear them out and have open discussion as far as questions that you might have. Okay. So with that, I'll introduce Jim Britton and Jay Gaither from Light in the Management Corporation.
Thank you, Joe. Good evening, and thank you for having us tonight. This is a discussion, so please interject questions as you, it can be confusing. And with that, I thought the best place to start with construction management is kind of the definition of construction management. And construction management is a term that's used universally. You probably hear it all the time, but it means significantly different. You hear CM at risk, and you hear agency CM. Are they the same? We'll talk about that. What is construction management risk? I think we kind of clean up that discussion and then go into what the duties and responsibilities are for an agency construction manager. And then a little discussion on why you need both, or the scope of work that we're being considered to be charged with. So construction management is universally used for two things. CM at risk, that is a delivery method, and we'll talk through what delivery methods are available to you. They're procured earlier in the construction project, design project, through an RFQ, not necessarily a lump sum bid. They're hired based on qualifications and value. The at-risk that you hear is once you get into the negotiation, you enter into a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price. They are at risk for that GMP. That's no different than a contractor that bids the project. They're at risk for that lump sum that they submit. Does that make sense? They do not manage the construction project on the owner's behalf. They have to, well, they don't have to, but they are responsible for their own bottom line. They're not responsible for your bottom line. They are for profit. And in the most basic term, they are a general contractor that you're allowed to choose and negotiate with. Does that make sense? Now, agency construction management is a management method. You're procured early through qualifications, much the same, generally before the architects and or the contractor or the CM at risk firm. Big thing is we are a fiduciary. We actually, in our contract, we are a fiduciary to you. That means we have to put your needs and you ahead of us. We do not perform design or construction. We are a third party to that. And in the manager of, we generally manage the design through construction. I like to call it trees to keys. So it's one person or one group or one team that acts as the hub of the wheel throughout the entire process. So the delivery methods that are available to you, to your, and you had a couple. I looked up your procurement code, and you have some that I'm not very familiar with. They're not used very often, but the ones that most people understand are the design, bid, build. That is, you advertise, you solicit bidders, you have bid day, low bid. And you can do that single prime contracting, or you can do multi-prime contracting. We've done both of those here. You've done both of those here. Construction management risk, talked about that a second ago, and design build. That's a little, we've done that with some municipal governments. It's not my favorite way to procure a contractor, but it is or a design professional, but it is available to you. And then there's some subsections of design, build, operate, maintain. You're starting to get into some of that IPP stuff that, if y'all remember, about 15 years ago that the school district pursued, and since then that version of it has been outlawed by the state. And then design, bid, finance, operate, maintain. They're pretty sophisticated ways of procuring projects.
Jim, you said that's not your preferred. Could you give clarity on that, please?
So, and I've acted as a contractor in design build, and it works fairly well in the private sector, but it requires a high level of trust because the architect does not work for you. The architect works for the contractor. So if there is a issue, you have no one on your side to help fix the problem. An example of that is the county actually hired us a number of years ago. They entered into a design build project for a spec building. And they got into it, several months, and the wheels kind of fell off. The owner, the county, got very frustrated because they did not have an advocate. There was some questions about grading and scope of work, and it just, so all the engineers and all the architects that normally work on your side are not available to you. And so they hired us to come in and try to straighten things out, and it really turns into more of a dispute resolution process then, where you're really trying to get into it, and you're actually oftentimes to get away from a potential claim, you're bringing in a different architectural firm to run certain designs and calculations. So it's, but design build can work. It just requires a high level of trust.
Thank you.
And just, this is something I say all the time. The strength of a delivery method should be offset by the weakness of the project. And so, you know, sometimes it's schedule, sometimes it's finance, sometimes it's the complexity of the project. So each one of those delivery methods has strengths, and so you should consider those when you go through.
Jim, while you're here and explaining for everybody, it's been a while since we've done it. Would you go back through single prime, multi-prime, explain what that is for everybody?
Sure. So starting about 1999, 2000, we were doing mostly multi-prime. We were actually doing some bulk purchasing. So you would bid out the project. You would get what you call a build and finishes contract. That would be your classical general contractor. But then you would have and that contract would be directly with the owner. You'd have an electrical contract that would be directly to the owner. HVAC, plumbing, so on and so forth. Grading. We still do some grading as an early site, which makes a lot of sense so that you can expedite a project. We would do bulk purchasing on HVAC equipment and then assign that to the HVAC firm. You can, in years past, they would take it down into even further. And so that was actually the segue into getting into the development of construction management at risk. Technically, a construction manager at risk has to be 100% broker. They can't self-perform work. And so, and they just break it out into different and lower, more specific and smaller packages. And there's risk and rewards. Generally, what you're saving when you do multi-prime, you're saving the markup that a general contractor has. The negative is they're not beholden to, if we don't play fair, it becomes a problem. I would never do that unless you have full-time supervision and guidance and leadership on the project. And then management method decisions. So these are kind of talking through it. You know, regardless of whatever method you choose, it's critical to have an advocate managing the project on your behalf. It's critical. You can hire a firm like us, CMA, construction management agency, construction management firm. You can manage the building program in-house with existing personnel if you have it. Or you can allow the architect to not only design the building, but also manage through contract administration. And generally what the architect provides with their in their services is a 2 times per week site visit. That is available to you. I would not recommend it. As an example, there's a high school close by that finished multiple months school year late, and it was managed by the architectural firm. And I'm not bashing the architect.
Not in this district.
Not in this district, correct. But very close. And the reason why I bring that up, I mean, architects are very good at what they do, but it's kind of like hiring a podiatrist to do heart surgery. Both of them are medical professionals, but one of them are better than, so, you know, this is what we do. We manage the logistics and construction, and other construction management firms, that's what they do. Architects design, that's what they do. And, but all of them are critical parts to the team.
So why not have any of this in-house?
Some places do that. The issue with, I mean, and that's Leanne was talking about budgeting, and there's a couple ways of handling it. You know, you can, if you hire a firm like myself, it's not one person, and I want you to understand that it's not a one-person job, it's a team. So, like it's myself, it's Jay, it's our estimator, it's our in-house electrical engineer. It's a team that have different and specific expertise that are involved in the activities that we do. For example, constructability reviews. We give the electrical components to our electrical engineer, and he scrubs those to make sure not only it's buildable, but it's cost effective. For example, knowing the code, electrical primaries from transformer to the main switchgear can be copper, can be aluminum, but almost always the engineers design it as copper.
Yep.
And so there's thousands and thousands of dollars in making that one change. We have structural folks. When we scrub the drawings, we make sure that the depth of the footings are not excessive. One thing that we hit all the time is architects and structural engineers designing the top of the footing at 24 inches when 16 inches is fine. When you think about the length of footings around the building, that's thousands of dollars, and it's money that you spend that you don't know you're spending, that you don't have to spend. So those are some of the things that, and I've kind of gotten off your question, why do you not do it in-house, so you got to look out and hire those professionals. You got to ramp up. If your building program is over, you got to ramp back down, ramp up, ramp down, ramp up. And as the market we're in, we have to poach people, professionals from other firms. A guy that shows up with a resume, you got to look hard, because if it's worth his salt, he's working or she's working.
Sure.
So I'm not sure. It's actually a way you can handle it, but there's pros and cons.
Appreciate that.
So here's some of the benefits. So when you ask that question, we actually are an extension of your staff. We work, we've worked for Joe as our leader for years, and so he has been involved to the nth degree, but it's very difficult for Joe to handle that all himself. Fiduciary obligations I talked about. We produce not only milestone estimates at design development, schematic design, and construction documents, we also do cost modeling. Early on in a project, for example, you need to make a decision if this is going to be a load-bearing masonry project or a structural steel project. And at different periods of time, the costs are less from one to the other. At any given time, we have 5 or 6, our team members have 5 or 6 projects that we're bidding, so we are always in the market, and we know kind of where the prices are. And so making those decisions earlier not only saves you time, but it saves you money on bid day. Again, you're spending money, you potentially can spend money that you don't need to spend, that you don't realize you're spending. Project scheduling, it's not just project scheduling, and it's not just in the construction side, it's in the design side. A day lost in design is no different than a day lost in construction. So that's critical to hold everybody accountable, and that's something that we hold close to our heart. Quality assurance, making sure what's in those drawings actually get built. What's in those specifications actually are provided. And just the small, there can be, I've seen contractors on a 4-inch slab graded out at 3.5 inches. And that can be thousands of dollars in savings to that contractor. And you don't know you're not getting it. So those are some of the things, we're kind of the watchdog when we're on site. Communication, the hub and the wheel that we talked about, so that we we manage the financial component as well as the shop drawings, the daily reports, the owner, contractor, architect meetings. And then lastly, the liability is we reduce that by being there full-time on projects. There's no such thing as no liability, but especially in the construction world. But since 1999, Fort Mill is, I think I counted up, we're close to $700 million in construction, and we've had 2 claims. One that was, and both of them were, this was my first experience in the legal realm, but there was a $300,000 claim because a multi-prime electrical contractor went bankrupt. The bonding company came in. The general contractor filed a delay claim. It was $300,000, and it was about a 20-page claim. I still keep it, but I have a 1,000-page response to that claim, and we went to mitigation, And they spent 5 minutes on the facts, and then the rest of the time negotiating it down. And I think we participated in it, in the settlement. I think the school district ended up, it was $7,500 for them, $7,500 for us, and that was just to kind of make it go away. So that was 2 claims and $700 million. That's a pretty good record.
Right?
Yeah,
Seriously.
thank you.
Don't be saying that out loud.
Typical project management services, this thing's going to roll. These are all the activities that we provide while we're here. The long-range facility assessment, long-range facility needs plan, on-site leadership, project delivery methods, maintaining construction schedules, pay applications, special inspections, AHJ. A couple of our team members actually were on the AOSF design group, assisting FFE in delivery and installation, punched list, closeout, construction callback, and I mean, it goes on and on and on. It's a significant amount of responsibilities and activities. This is what that list looks like during each phase: pre-construction, design, construction, closeout, and post-construction. And then each program, project, construction management, cost and estimating. So it's quite a lot of work. And so when you think about doing it in-house, it takes a lot of different hats to do this work. And you're hiring them potentially full-time when you're only hiring, like our estimator, for 50% of his time or 20% of his time. So there's an economy of scales there. And these are the work scopes that, as we understand it. Finalizing the long-range facility needs plan. That in a district like this, it needs to be done yearly because of, you have done a great job of managing that growth. This is part of managing that growth. Promotion of upcoming bond referendum. I've been fortunate to participate in several of the bond committees, mostly as information provider. Land acquisition and 8% projects, supervise necessary utility relocations. You've got one of those projects going on or just starting. Oversight of early design, and that's a big one, to make the schedules that are being contemplated. Early design, it needs to take place. Programming, making sure that every school has similar, if not the same, components. I think that's critical. And then, again, the milestone estimates and cost modeling is really critical to manage your cost as you near either the GMP or your bid date. And with that, I will conclude my presentation and take any questions you may have.
So generally speaking, the previous page is what is currently the scope of work that you're essentially, Mr. Romanek is looking for you guys to provide and negotiating and discussing a contract that would ultimately come back for approval at some point in the future.
Right.
And so it's the big projects. It's not day-to-day maintenance of schools. It's the major construction or significant renovations of some sort.
The key is going to be that one that says management and oversight of early design of the elementary and middle. So that's going to be a whole load. They're going to provide one specific employee, JD, and then they have multiple employees helping us out through that whole gap as well.
Questions?
The podiatry example answered my question.
Right.
Sorry for that analogy, but it's
That visual.
We can understand that, Jim. That's good.
That's right. All right.
thank you.
Joe, anything else that you wanted to close with? No? All right, so you guys will bring to us future items for consideration when you're ready. Okay?
Well, get ready. He's gonna go Joe on you.
Okay, well, that does bring us to, we do have one action item. Dr. Wakesness, Mr. Ollinger, some new instructional materials.
Yes, good evening. Tonight we're going to talk to you about some new instructional materials that we are hoping to get approval to adopt. So just to give a quick overview of the general process, it has been very different the last few years since COVID. The timeline has been off. But typically the State Department of Education, they do a priority list of all the subject areas and grade levels that they think should be funded for new adoptions. It's usually a very long list that we get in the fall for the following school year. And then once the State Department actually learns the amount of funding that is available, they determine which subjects and grade levels will actually be funded. So the list usually shrinks 2 times before we get our final list, depending on the budget. So before it even gets to us to start deciding, the State Department solicits input from the public on potential books that may appear on a selection list. They try to get feedback from whoever would like to provide feedback in the state, and once that happens, they may alter the list or request changes from the publisher. And then finally, after that happens, the State Department presents a list of adoptable books for school districts. So in order to have books funded by the state, we're required to choose a text that is from the list. Otherwise, districts have to purchase it on their own, which is very cost prohibitive, and I don't think anyone does that because they're about $150 per book, depending on the subject and the grade level. So pretty much we're required to adopt from the state approved list.
Mike, you don't see it up there, but once they receive feedback, they request changes from the pub. They do receive feedback in Columbia. They posted, I think November or December, they did the science or the social.
I remember seeing.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's so.
An opportunity for parent input.
That's where that comes in, the vetting.
And I believe we received some emails from some of our local parents that reviewed and liked some, didn't like others, so that has been incorporated into the Columbia's.
Right. Yes.
Criteria of selection.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so they have a whole process that the state follows before it even gets to us, where the public has a chance to have input. I know this year some of the U.S. history books, they were sent back to the publishers. I don't know if that's the right word, but their publishers were requested to make changes before the State Department would adopt them. And that just happened for 4th and 5th grade and U.S. history, so we're not talking about those tonight because we're still in the process of reviewing them, but just an example of how sometimes changes are made from the state level. So what are some of the things we look for in a text? Again, it depends on the subject area and the grade level, but regardless of the subject and the grade level, direct alignment to state standards, that's always the most important thing. Is it helping our teachers teach the state standards? Is the readability appropriate for the grade level? Does the material look interesting? Does it have appeal to students? A big thing now, and really for the last 5, 6, 7 years, but especially since the last couple of years, the included digital resources. And the textbook publishers have really done, in my opinion, a great job with the digital resources that our teachers and students have as part of the adoption process. The teachers are always interested in the provided teacher resources. Sometimes it's as simple as a teacher manual, but sometimes there's assessment banks that the teachers can choose from. Sometimes there's sample lesson plans, project-based learning activities. So that's always on the list that teachers like to consider also. And then depending on the specific grade level subject area, there could be other requirements, like for a high school science class, maybe labs that are provided or lab activities provided. So sometimes they're very unique to the subject area. These are not all the things that are looked at for adoption, but those are some of the highlights. And Joe, I think I might have clicked up too. All right, so with the middle school science, those are the books I'm going to talk about first. They were on the list for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And this followed a shortened timeline, but it was more of the traditional process where they had a textbook caravan in Columbia like they've had in the past. Before COVID, where teachers can go and hear from the publishers, get a look at the materials, and ask questions to the publishers. So each of our middle schools sent a science teacher to Columbia to learn about the options. The state also provided a virtual caravan. So each middle school science teacher had the opportunity to watch the presentations. They were not there live to ask questions, but they were able to see the presentation. Then we had the teachers come in, a grade level science teacher. So we did 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade on 3 separate days where they came in to do some work and try to decide on a book for their grade level. So what we used, and Yashika Latimer, our math coordinator, because we don't have a science coordinator. Hopefully that will change. But Yashika Latimer, our math 612 math coordinator, she really helped with the process for adopting the middle school science books. So the teachers worked through a document from the STEM Center, which is an organization in the state, but they provided a great resource that asks a lot of questions that help teachers focus on reviewing the materials. So they use that as kind of their guide to go through the work. The teachers spent a day looking at it, the different resources, and the books, and each grade level unanimously decided they would love to have the STEM Scopes 3D text and digital resources from Accelerate Learning. Some of the reasons that they mentioned were they were lined up to what I talked about earlier: the readability, the digital resources, the state standards. And after we thought, well, this is going to be a problem if each grade level wants a different book, but they all ended up with the same publisher, the same exact book, so that made the process very straightforward. Sixth grade social studies was also adopted. Seventh grade social studies was adopted last year. Those was a brand new class, brand new standards. And eighth grade, which is the South Carolina history / U.S. history, those were just approved, I think last week, so we haven't gone through the process. But sixth grade social studies, we followed the same process, except that there was not an in-person caravan due to the late approval from the state. However, they did have all the recordings available, so each teacher got to watch the recordings if they so wished. And we had the teachers come in, they looked at all different resources, and they decided on world civilizations from HMH with a lot of the same reasons: the digital resources, the direct alignment with the standards. We had sixth grade social studies teachers in last year that created some units that they could share with each other and use from school to school, and they felt that this resource directly aligns with the work that they've already done with the new standards for social studies. So before I turn it over to Peter, he's going to talk about the elementary process. I would like to know if there's any questions for the general process or for the middle school science or sixth grade social studies.
I believe you said you're going to have some more books next board meeting because of the lateness of the review.
Correct.
At the state level.
Yes, at the next meeting, well, first we wanted to bring the books that we've already had done so we could start the ordering process. But the next meeting we'll have fourth and fifth grade social studies, I believe, and K2 social studies, and then eighth grade social studies, and a couple of the U.S. history courses and government courses at the high school. But that'll be at the next meeting.
And that will provide enough time to get them here and ready for the start of the school?
It should, yes, yeah.
Supply chain.
Okay.
All right, I'll turn it over to Peter then, and he's going to talk to you about elementary science.
It's good to see everybody. Same guidelines that Mike already shared for elementary, but just to walk through our process, we had 12 total options for elementary schools, which was a lot. We started with our assistant principals who were over textbooks, as well as our lead teachers. They went down to Columbia, or they were able to view the textbook options through the virtual caravan. I met with the lead teachers first, and we kind of narrowed it down to 4 of the 12 that we really liked. Follow that up with a meeting with the assistant principals that attended, and they added a 5th option to that list of 5. In addition to that, schools, a lot of vendors, they'll send samples to the schools where they set them up in a room or a space. Teachers can view them. We set up a Google survey to, if they wanted to provide feedback, they could do that. Didn't have a lot of input from that, but it was some good feedback. So we ended up narrowing those options from 12 down to 5 based on the feedback from those lead teachers and assistant principals. So after we did that, we made grade level teams. So we had a representative from all of the 11 schools attend a grade level meeting. So 5th grade met together, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and so on. So we had 11 representatives there. So we had the materials available, as well as the virtual digital options as well for them to kind of look through and score. They kind of broke up in small groups. kind of came to a consensus, and then we used a scoring rubric where they could go through, and it scored things such as specific standards as well as some of those general items Dr. Wakesness shared earlier on that rubric. And then we came together, had a big group discussion, and narrowed down top choices for each grade level. So not like the middle schools, we have 6 grade levels, so it's kind of like if you take 6 people, you ask them where they want to go to dinner, they're probably not all going to select the same place. We did have 4 of the 6, though, that did like the one choice, and then the top choice, which was McGraw-Hill, Inspire Science is our final recommendation. One of the other grade levels that didn't select at the top, it was in their top 3. So we all felt like the lead teachers, assistant principals, and I all thought the 5 that we brought were excellent options. It's really just kind of picking from those 5 that we felt like were great. So McGraw-Hill ended up being our top one, and just we felt like it matched the standards very well. It provided level readers that we felt like were on grade level for those students. It is compatible with Google Classroom, which we use, as well as ClassLink. So it provides digital resources as well as Spanish version on the digital side if we need that for some of our students. So that's our recommendation for science, and like Dr. Wakesness said, we'll be bringing back K2 social studies as well as 4th and 5th. 3rd was already approved last year. So with that, so I'll take any questions that you may have about the recommendation, and then I'll make just a recommendation overall.
I'd just like to say thank you, because I know the tremendous amount of work that goes into this, and when you kind of listen to the number of meetings that really staff was involved in, I didn't hear teaching or planning as part of that. These are extra meetings that I know the staff is really dedicating to get the right materials in our students' hands. So thank you both for your efforts.
So it is an action item?
Correct. So we would recommend for McGraw-Hill Inspire Science for elementary STEM scopes, grades 6, 8 science, and then world history, world civilizations for 6th grade social studies.
And would you like those named specifically?
Yes.
Would you
If that's-
like those named specifically?
So I would say McGraw-Hill STEM scopes and world history.
I would like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration for books for the coming school year being STEM Scopes 3D for science grades 6 through 8, and for HMH World History, World Civilizations for social studies grade 6, and to have McGraw-Hill Inspire Science for elementary. I don't remember what we decided that was.
Inspire Science.
There we go.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second.
I was sweating that one.
Whatever.
We have a motion and a second for STEM Scopes 3D, science grades 6 through 8, HMH World History, World Civilizations, for social studies grade 6? Yes, okay. And I didn't get and
McGraw-Hill Inspire Science.
McGraw-Hill Inspire Science.
Or whatever
for-
grade you want that for, or all of.
All of elementary.
There we go, all K-12.
No.
K-5.
Rather, sorry,
K-5.
you know.
Is there any further discussion or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Your books
You
are
have
adopted.
books.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, that brings us to a superintendent's report on a couple of things.
Sure, and then we have an executive session
Yes.
scheduled after that.
We do.
Sir?
Let's begin with the calendar of events, and I'll review what I have, and then you can add to it as board members. Of course, the meeting tonight. The visits, I would say, I was trying to think of an order. If we start on next Monday, if we start at Fort Mill Elementary and go to Fort Mill Middle, then Forest Creek and Riverview, I think we just go around the loop. I think that'll work, 11 to 1. Then you get into the District Hall of Fame ceremony, which some of you may not have attended since we didn't do it last year. That's going to be real special this year with the band. I think we have 3 band directors going in and 2 outstanding veteran teachers. So that'll be and that's on the 17th at Fort Mill High School Auditorium. The retirement reception, always a fun event before the next board meeting at 4:45 on the 24th. We've already said we won't have the public hearing for the budget, so we'll have to just X through that. We're moving that a couple of weeks. But we will have a board meeting on the 24th. I assume, I guess we'll see
We have more books to approve.
we have more books, right, that's
Yeah.
right. Then you get down to the last 2 days of school, the half-days, and then the teacher workday, and there are the graduations. Always special, starting with Catawba Ridge at 10, Nation Ford at 2, Fort Mill High at 6, and then I'll go soak my back, I guess, after standing for all those. Then the holiday, and we get into the June 7th meeting with the budget. So I know I didn't mention the Rotary Literacy Picnic, which is tomorrow, the 4th, and there may be some other big days in there.
Year gala tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night in Columbia.
For sure, wow. Teacher of the Year Gala with our one out of the last 22 years person that's gonna try to win this thing,
It's gonna knock it out.
yeah.
I know, I think last meeting, we talked about the Tech Dowling Memorial. I think you confirmed it was
Yep.
on the 23rd
June
of June.
23rd.
Okay.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
So I'm assuming we would have a June 21st board meeting,
24th,
21st,
June.
oh, I'm
June.
sorry, June.
because we would have to have a second reading of the budget.
We got a plan for that. We'll talk about it.
It's the public meeting and we would approve it the 7th,
We can talk about it.
present it next week.
Maybe. I think a lot depends on the budget calendar.
Okay.
Right.
I think we can avoid it June 20,
Oh, that's fine. That's fine with me. I'm just-
Yeah, we typically have not had to. We'll see if
Okay.
this
Yeah.
year we have to or not.
good question, though.
All right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So that's the calendar.
Go?
What else you
Yeah,
got?
okay,
What else you got?
back to my little stuff. Okay, the enrollment update, we gained our typical little slow grind, 11 students since April, up to 17,869, and then in the summer it'll explode again, so that's where we get up to that 18, what's the projection, Leanne? 18.3, is that all? I think, okay, I thought it was more higher, but it'll be up in the 18s, based on our numbers. Then the attendance winners for March, Fort Mill High School with 94.1, Springfield Middle with 96.2, and Gold Hill Elementary with 95.1. So the big winners, Springfield Middle on the teacher attendance rate. And that is a good rate here, so at the end of the year.
It always is.
And that's all I have, knowing that we've got a lengthy executive session.
Anything else before we move? So we are in need of an executive session to discuss personnel recommendations, discuss legal issues, and contractual issues.
Motion to go into executive session.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody, for joining. We're going to move into executive session. Have a great evening.
Go read your books.